The fading light of dusk cast long, ominous shadows across the jagged rocks as if the mountain itself conspired to hide the secrets that lay within. Porter crouched low behind a boulder, his breath shallow as the wind rustled softly through the crevices. There was a stillness to the air, an unnatural quiet, broken only by the occasional distant chirp of a bird, but the silence held a tension, a kind that wrapped around his chest and squeezed. He glanced over his shoulders at his companions, hidden behind him in the craggy rock formations. They were close enough to see the grim expressions on their faces, but far enough that they remained in the shadows, waiting for his signal. Porter's hand gripped the rough surface of the rock, steadying himself as his heart raced. Then it came, the sound. It was like the mountain groaning under some immense weight. A deep resonating rumble echoed from the cavern ahead, growing louder until it felt as though the cave itself would collapse under the strain. His eyes darted forward, searching the entrance to the cave, which was nothing more than a dark mouth carved into the stone, barely visible in the dying light. There, emerging from the darkness, a massive figure moved. Porter's breath caught in his throat. From the shadows of the cave, the troll lumbered out into the open. Even in the dim light, its towering form was unmistakable. 9 feet tall at least, brawny, with skin a sickly green stretched tight over its bulging muscles. Its skin was rough, leathery, and marred by scars, evidence of battles long past, or perhaps the punishments of the very environment that had shaped it. The beast's face was twisted, grotesque, with sunken eyes that glinted with dull, animalistic intelligence. Each step it took shook the ground beneath it, sending tiny vibrations through the rocks Porter crouched behind. Its massive fist clenched and unclenched as it thudded forward. The earth seemed to tremble under its weight. The troll let out a low, guttural growl that reverberated through the canyon, and Porter felt a shiver of dread down his spine. Porter forced himself to swallow his fear and quietly retreated, careful not to make a sound. He needed to reach the others. His mind raced. How could they hope to defeat something so massive? Yet he knew there was no turning back. They had a mission, and the troll stood between them and the path ahead. Sliding back behind the rock where his group waited, Porter straightened, his face set in a mask of determination, despite the fear gnawing at his insides. He could feel the tremor in his own hands as he adjusted his helmet, the dull golden metal now tarnished with dust and streaked with dirt. He was battle-worn, much like the men behind him, but he was their leader, and leaders did not show fear. "Ready yourselves," he whispered, his voice tight. The group looked at him, their expressions mirroring the fear and tension in the air. Ben, a lean and quick-footed young man, adjusted his bow, his fingers brushing the arrows with practiced precision. Father Donovan, grizzled and gray, clutched his warhammer, the symbol of his faith, now a weapon of war. Jerry, stocky and loyal, gave a nod, his sword already drawn. The rest of the group was ready to fight. The tremors grew stronger, the troll's approach unmistakable. The air was heavy with the beast's presence, the sound of its roars now filling the space. The very walls of the cave seemed to vibrate with its fury. Porter could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on him. They had to act. There was no time for hesitation. "Charge," Porter hissed, his voice barely a whisper, but the group understood. They moved in unison, slipping from the rocks and rushing forward towards the looming troll. Porter led the way, his pickaxe gripped tightly in his hand, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. The ground seemed to quake beneath him as the troll turned its massive head towards them, its small, beady eyes narrowing in recognition. It let out a roar, deep, guttural, and angry. Before they could even reach the beast, Ben fired an arrow. The sharp thwack of the bowstring sounded as the arrow sailed through the air, embedding itself into the troll's thick, leathery shoulder. The troll barely flinched, its eyes glowing with rage. It swiped its arm through the air like a massive battering ram, knocking 2 men aside as if they were little more than straw dolls. Porter felt the shockwave from the impact as dust and debris rose into the air. His ears rang with the force of the blow, but he pressed on, determined. The men scattered around the troll, darting in and out, slashing at its legs and arms, hoping to find a weakness in its stone-like skin. But the troll's hide was thick, impenetrable, and its movements, though slow, were devastatingly powerful. The troll let out another roar, this time slamming its massive fist into the ground. Crack! The earth split open beneath them, revealing a gaping ravine, deep and dark, as if the mountain itself had opened its mouth to swallow them whole. The chasm yawned wide, swallowing the light of the dying sun, leaving only shadows and the terror of the unknown. Porter's eyes widened as he took in the sight of the ravine. His mind raced, but then, like a spark, an idea formed. The beast's strength was its downfall, if they could trick it into collapsing the ground beneath its own weight. He glanced at the troll, then at the widening cracks in the earth, and took a deep breath. "Come on," Smash, he muttered under his breath. And then with sudden resolve, he sprinted forward. He dashed towards the troll, his feet pounding against the trembling earth, and just as the beast swung a massive arm towards him, Porter dropped low, sliding between its legs. With a sharp cry, he thrust his pickaxe upward, driving it deep into the troll's thick calf. The troll bellowed in pain, its massive body shaking as it stumbled, momentarily off balance. Behind him, Ben and Jerry moved quickly, darting around the troll, swiping at its legs and arms, distracting it as Father Donovan saw his chance. The troll, now furious, grabbed a large boulder in its hand, lifting it above its head, its intent clear, to crush Donovan beneath it. But Donovan was quicker. With a mighty roar of his own, he swung his warhammer down, striking the ground beneath the troll's feet. The final rock support gave way. The troll stumbled, its massive claws scrabbling at the edge of the ravine. For a moment it seemed as though it would hold on, its massive hand gripping the stone for dear life. But as it reached out, its hand latched onto John's arm, pulling him dangerously close to the edge. John's muscles strained, his face contorted with the effort of trying to free himself from the troll's grasp. His feet skidded towards the edge, the abyss yawning below him. "Get off!" John grunted, desperation in his voice. With a primal yell, he plunged his sword into the troll's hand. The beast roared in agony, its grip loosening as the pain surged through its body, and then with a final echoing cry, the troll plummeted into the darkness below. The cavern walls trembled as its massive form vanished into the abyss, dragging John's sword and one of their horses with it. The sound of the troll hitting the bottom of the ravine was like an earthquake, the ground shaking violently beneath their feet. For a brief moment there was silence, a stillness that hung in the air like a breath held too long. Then a low rumble began, growing louder by the second. Porter's eyes darted around as the walls of the cave began to shudder. Dust fell from the ceiling in thick clouds, and cracks raced across the stone. "The tunnel's collapsing!" someone shouted, but the voice was lost in the deafening roar of the cave coming down around them. "Move!" Porter shouted, his voice raw with urgency. Father Donovan leaped to one side, narrowly avoiding a falling boulder. Ben scrambled, trying to find footing on the crumbling ground. Porter dove towards the cave's exit, just as the massive chunk of rock crashed down between him and the others. The dust swirled thick in the air, choking, blinding. The ground gave way beneath them as more stones tumbled from above. In the confusion they were separated. Dust and debris filled the space, swallowing them whole. As the tunnel collapsed around him, the world fell into darkness.